If you're enjoying the Health Geeks Book Club podcast, we'd appreciate if you hit the subscribe button, leave a like, rating, or review, whichever your preferred podcatcher platform allows. The Health Geeks would like to apologize to Dr. Jen Gunter for mispronouncing her name in our discussion of the Menopause Manifesto. Again, to the listeners, it is Dr. Jen Gunter.
This edition of our podcast is brought to you by 360 Health and Well Balanced Nutrition.
Welcome to the Health Geeks Book Club podcast. Listen in as Kristen Norton and Eleanor Russell review all those great health and wellness books you've been wanting to read or you have read and want to talk about. Here's Kristen and Eleanor.
Hey everybody, we are back in the studio with a new topic for you. This one's for the ladies.
Ooh. Oh, and we have Tim here anyway.
Yeah. So,
He's got lots to say too.
To my fellas, just be patient because you need to know. Just so that you know,
It's
you
important.
need to know.
It
is important.
You don't have to stop listening right now.
Right.
So this is a topic that women feel nervous and sometimes ashamed to talk about. But we are going to be discussing menopause.
I don't want to do it.
Right. So people might dread this. They might be embarrassed to talk about it. And Eleanor and I had that reaction a little bit.
Yeah, why did you even pick this book? I thought, God, Kristen, come on.
So we picked a book about menopause for a couple reasons. My business partner was like, hey, have you heard of this book? And I'm like, oh, that looks interesting. I knew that the author had a lot of other stuff going on, so prominent author. And then in our practice at Well Balanced Nutrition, we see a lot of women in and around the menopause age, and I thought that was really important to address. But it's just something that we don't talk about as a society. And I think that needs to change.
And I think you and I both maybe felt that when we got into this book. It's like, oh, this is a hard read, hard topic. But the other thing is, you're on one side of this conversation, and I'm on the other side of it.
That's right.
And so,
I'm approaching it.
Yeah, and one of this thing about nobody talks about it is true. It's sort of uncharted territory, and historically, it's uncharted territory. It's even worse than pregnancy, and being, discussed by women even.
And I think that really limits the connection and the knowledge. And so it kind of leaves us as individuals in the dark about our bodies and about what to expect. And I don't think that's good.
Well, we're here to open the book a little bit.
Let's open it up.
Yeah, so, and coming from traditions, which both of us do, and mine are earlier than yours, the Victorian age was a little closer to me than you. And the issue of privacy, and you just don't. There's certain things you just don't talk about in public.
You don't talk about hormones.
No, and none of these body parts that we're going to be talking about are like that's off limits. And so, I used to teach anatomy and physiology and reproductive health, so I would do that in a classroom very comfortably, because that's a context of need to know in my professionally. But what this, did we tell them what book we're going to be talking about? Did we name it?
No, we haven't introduced it officially.
Let's do that first. Yeah, what is it? The Menopause Manifesto. And it's got a subtitle there, doesn't it? Or is that it?
Own Your Health with Facts and Feminism.
Yeah, that word feminism.
That's going to be a big
so I had
we talk about.
little rebellion against that too, because I don't know how I feel about feminism, but then on the other hand, I really think I do. So,
but you know how you said, it's taboo, we don't talk about hormones? I want to share this experience in my reading. So I was able to read some things outside of the Health Geeks Book Club podcast books, and one of those was...
You mean related to this topic?
Prince Harry's new book.
Oh, Spare?
Spare. And it was interesting because one of the stories he tells about Meghan and... What's the sister-in-law? Kate? Kate. They had a little riff, and part of it, according to Harry, was that Meghan said something about Kate's hormones. Oh, it's okay. You just have mommy brain. And then she got really mad, apparently. And later when they talked about it, she was like, well, you mentioned my hormones. Only my friends can mention my hormones. that's just a level we don't go to. And I'm like, that's interesting. Why is that there when...
Yeah, I don't know.
I think we're talking about it today. So
yeah, you have some ideas about that.
Mm-hmm.
On the credit page in this book, she says your awesomeness is unrelated to your estrogen. So own your own health with facts and feminism for every woman.
Currently, there are 70 million women in the U.S. who are 45 years or older. Mm-hmm. And worldwide, that number is over 1 billion.
That's not too many.
And many women will live 1/3 to half of their lives in the menopause continuum.
So are we past our prime?
Are we going there?
I don't know. You want to go somewhere else? Let's go somewhere else.
All right, let's go.
In announcing her candidacy for the Republican presidential nomination, Haley said there should be a mental competency test for any politician over age 75, something that would apply to both President Joe Biden and fellow Republican candidate Donald Trump. This was Lemon's take.
She says people, politicians or something are not in their prime. Nikki Haley isn't in her prime. Sorry. When a woman is considered to be in her prime in her 20s and 30s and maybe 40s.
What are you talking? Wait.
That's not according to me.
Even though Lemon's comments didn't sit well with co-anchor Poppy Harlow, he didn't walk them back during the show.
If you Google when is a woman in her prime, it'll say 20s, 30s, and 40s. I don't necessarily...
40s. Oh, I got it another
I'm not saying
decade.
I agree with that. So I think she has to be careful about saying that.
Later on Thursday, Lemon took to Twitter to apologize.
Yeah, so according to Google, if you're around that menopause age...
You're way past your prime.
You're way past your prime. Oh, he got so much negative feedback for that.
Yeah.
He has since apologized.
Mm-hmm. But I thought it was kind of interesting. We're reading this book, and he just accommodated us so nicely to, have this flair in the media. And, Tim and Kristen and I were talking before we turned the mics on about how we're accustomed to, what'd you say? We were living in an age where
we are addicted to outrage.
Yeah, so this outrageous comment that he made is really probably reflective of other people's opinions as well, uncovered.
And of the patriarch.
Yeah, so I sort of think, for us, the timing was really fun because Jen Gunter she's OBGYN, has been practicing for several years. Her book was published in 2018. And she's also the author of the Vagina Bible, and she has a new book coming out in September called Blood. So it's going to be, she's on the soapbox about how women need to know their bodies, and maybe men need to know women's bodies as well, and what happens to them with age.
Yeah, I think that maybe the Vagina Bible came out in 2018 because this one says copyright 2021.
Oh, it does? Okay, all right. Thank you.
This is her newer one.
Thank you.
And I invited her to talk with us, but she was too busy writing that other book to be on here.
So she is writing a manifesto.
And she's not shy about her feminism views.
Yeah, and so, of course, I have to go down the rabbit hole of what's a manifesto. She's talking about a manifesto, and it's a public declaration of policy or aims. And it can be revolutionary. It promotes a new idea with prescriptive solutions that could cause change, and the author believes should be made. So I think she does. She has a manifesto here. She's saying the way we've cared for women in the past cannot continue. There are better ways to do it.
Yeah, a quote from her says, apparently there is nothing of lower value than an aging woman's body, and many in our society treat menopause not as a phase of life, but rather as a phase of death, sort of a pre-death. And women are so much more than their ovaries, so it's important to sit back and look at the whole picture. And that she does in this book. And she says, when menopause is discussed in Western society, it's often viewed negatively as a cruel joke or even as a disease. And she goes into the history of how we got to the term of menopause, and that has a whole, patriarch story behind it, correct?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. There was, I had some notes on that. The French fella, Dr. Gardain, I believe is his name, came up with the word menopause, menopause, and the derivations from that come from month and pause or cessation. So the cessation of the monthlies. Is that what you understood about the derivation of that word?
Yeah, and it was, she says, it's invented by a man who felt women should cover their arms and not wear blush, whose book on the subject contributed nothing valuable to the body of knowledge except it left a term that ties women forever to menstruation. So he had some thoughts about how women should dress in menopause and
whether you wear makeup or not.
It's an interesting podcast. Jen Gunter
you
has
listen
a
to the
podcast
Okay.
On menopause. And she goes into that story. So that's an interesting listen if you're curious about where that word came from.
Yeah. Even other words of the female anatomy come from interesting derivations too, like the pudendum, that's Latin for shame. And the clitoris is coming from a word that means to hide. So, women should hide these things. They should be ashamed of them. And so, therefore, they're not for public situation. But even the word menopause, says it derives from cessation, but got shortened to menopause. And the pause would seem like it's temporary. And it's not. It is a final menstrual period.
Well, even hysterectomy.
It was hysterical.
Hysterical. It was to cure women of
their
madness.
Yeah.
Stupid.
And what I loved about her when she got, because I really think our language matters, the words we use do influence our thought processes. And so she says, how about if we came up with a word for men called erectopause? And I thought that was pretty
How'd
good.
they like that?
Yeah, probably not. So it didn't get incorporated into the language. But also she thought a little more broadly about how did other cultures, do they have words for this? Some cultures don't even have a word for it, which I thought was interesting. They don't even describe it. And so the Dutch have a word called overgang. I think I'm saying that slightly closely to the way you might say it, but it's passing away or a road from A to B, which is a much more pleasant concept. It just passes away, and we're moving from part A to part B. Mm-hmm. Okay, I'm ready. The Finnish have Valdenhavendukt, or something which means change of year. The Swedish have Climacterium, which means change or stages of life. And the Japanese have a Konenki, which means change of life. So these societies that have words that aren't quite as harsh typically have women that don't suffer as much. So she's suggesting that cultural influences in the context of which you're experiencing it can affect the way you experience it. It's sort of a circular thing.
Yeah.
But she had a quote in here: "It's hard to feel good about yourself when everyone around you is telling you how much you suck." So it's like, menopause is awful. It's terrible. You're going to feel it off. It's just your sex life is over. You're done. You might as well just go crawl in a hole. Well, who wants to do that?
Well, you can't deny that it's got some downfalls. She opens the book with if menopause were a Yelp.
I love this.
It would have 1 star. The establishment has temperature control issues, drenching heat followed by terrible chills, defies the laws of thermodynamics, would not recommend. Awful, awful, awful. Bleeding was scheduled but was rebooked without notification, so arrived 3 weeks later than expected while I was in an Uber and I flooded the car. The driver gave me a terrible review. The sex was dry.
Yelp reviews, boy.
1 stars.
Yeah. And other people call that atrophic vaginitis, vaginal atrophy. And now they've changed that word to genitourinary syndrome of menopause, hoping that will feel better than this.
Well, you can't even say it. You can because you're
Eleanor.
You're Eleanor the genius. But other people.
Yeah. Medicalese. It's medicalese.
Because I remember, and this is the guy here, right? In case you didn't know, I'm a man.
Okay.
I hate the term "the change."
Mm-hmm.
I just feel like that is dismissing it. Not that it needs to be. The whole thing here is, why do we make such a big deal out of it?
Right.
It's a natural thing that happens. But I think also at the same time, you can't be dismissive of it and she's going through the change.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, the change could be anything. If you lose a finger, that's change. If suddenly you have a brain tumor, that's a change.
Yeah, it is.
So while I think menopause and the way it's stated like that is insensitive on the other side of it, we need a word other than the change, but something that maybe even celebrates, because you've reached a milestone in this, right? Am I wrong? Again, as a
I'm
man,
all for it. If you get there, it's a privilege.
Right.
Actually, I mean, a lot of women die before they get to experience it.
right. So, and Kristen and I were talking in pregame. I'm like, would you not want to get rid of the cramps?
Yeah.
I mean, I know there's things that come with it, like the hot flashes and things like that, but all the things that
The inconveniences.
you complained about it all of your life, and now you're through with it, and damn it.
yeah, right.
So
That's the way I look at it, baby.
yeah, I think we need to do something to celebrate it for those who want it, but don't dismiss it and don't be overly judgmental about it.
Well, it seems like there in earlier cultures, I think I read something in her book that stated that there maybe not the Greeks, but somebody way back there felt you were returning to a virginal state, and then you could become the queen or the wisdom person. And I kind of like that.
I like
Well,
that
you can't
too.
have sex and be smart.
Well, yeah.
So
Yeah. Okay, here's some other words for you. How about
Okay.
the Dodge, the monthlies, the middle-age decline, the women's inferno, women's winter, death of sex, critical stage, hot blooms, flushes.
I don't mind the women's winter thing because when you get to the winter of your life, that's like end stage. But what about
I'm not sure I like that.
women's autumn or something?
Yeah. I don't. That seasonal thing means dried up and dead and gone.
Yeah, yeah.
So let's not do that one.
Well, I like how you say we should celebrate it, and
Yes.
I think yes, we should, and we should be supportive. In fact, on social media, especially in LinkedIn, menopause is a hot topic.
Evidently,
because
we're on trend.
we are always in
love
UK. In the UK,
I love men.
they're trying to press for stricter rules and policies around workplaces and how they treat women in menopause.
Oh, you mean instead of firing them?
Yeah.
At 56, I can tell you many women I know at 56 got exited so that the companies either didn't have to support the benefits, which they were getting ready to get for retirement, or they didn't want to put up with this change thing because they're difficult.
That's
or,
terrible.
they don't feel good. They don't, blah, blah. So, yeah, there is something going on out here. And what about the UK, did you say?
I said that they tried and failed to implement policies that would prevent that kind of thing in workplaces.
Yeah.
And if we talked about it more, we celebrate once the things are over, but I think why people dread it is because the menopause transition is when you're experiencing a lot of the hormonal chaos and that can come with increased health risk, depression, and a whole slew of things that are troublesome.
Some of that is probably necessary for us to talk about. What are the not every woman has a bad pass-through. If you are one that has medical history, who has, maybe already been identified as cardiovascular risk or arthritis, I don't know, there are things that are in your constellation of health and the way you've lived your life. If you're a smoker, if you're an excessive drinker, there are things that are going to make that passage through more difficult. How you've eaten, over the years may influence your experience. Not any guarantees, but there is some evidence that some of these practices are somewhat supportive of having a smoother move.
Right. And as Jen says, menopause doesn't happen in a vacuum, so it can coincide with just general aging and
Medical
life
issues.
life stressors. She calls it the 3M diagram,
Yeah.
menopause in perspective. So
I
you've
liked
got
it. I thought it was
menopause,
interesting.
the medical side, maturity, macro environment and micro environment. So
Yeah,
take it all into consideration.
Yeah, and those macro and micro environments are including the lifestyle and the family that you got born into, the circumstances. Have you had adverse childhood experiences? Because that was a surprise. We've read, in Oprah's, what happened to you. It also evidently affects how well you navigate the physiological changes in your later years. But yeah, I thought that diagram is probably something a lot of people should take some time to look at. I think if you're, we're going to talk a lot about the history and our personal ideas here right now about it, but we'll get into some more of the details of the book as we go along. But women say they're surprised. And I'm thinking about my daughter and Kristen, who are on, still in the reproductively active age, and looking forward or not to down the road, and the fear of it or the dread of it, or like Tim was saying, getting rid of some of the inconveniences of being reproductively capable. There's adjustments that we have, but evolutionarily, it seems like we have evolved as humans to have grandmothers, so they want us to, we live past this change. There are other species like the chimpanzee that's close to us that also menstruates, but after it's over, they die, which I thought was an interesting thing. I wasn't sure I'd remembered that. But the killer whale, very much like us, can be grandmothers, and they take care of the babes in the pod. And so, I'm looking at what we call capstone species in ecology, the ones that are at the top of the food chain or whatever, and kind of do the downward pressure on all the other populations. Killer whales, crop the ocean species, and we tend to crop a lot of species. We kill a lot of things. So, and not so many things kill us, we kill each other. So I think the benefit to the species is that since we invest so many resources in the pregnancy, it takes 9 months, and then the newly born thing can't take care of itself, to get up to reproductive capacity to keep the species going. So having an older person who has not the complications of birthing and all those things is an advantage to the species. So in a way, it is a celebration that we can contribute to the survival of the species and maybe help it become a kinder, gentler species.
Mm-hmm.
Agreed.
So did I go on too long on that? I'm sorry.
That's all right. But I think this is a great episode to really share that we think it can be a positive thing if we view it that way.
And talk about it.
Talking about it is empowering for those who haven't been there. And I felt the same way about pregnancy and giving birth and having a child, right? Like, I think there is a problem when you see things too positively.
Yeah.
Like, oh, that's wonderful. You're going to have a child. But
surprise.
But then nobody really informs you on the struggle. So I feel like while we celebrate it and while we view it in a positive light, it's also important to empower women and let men understand what's going on, let women know what's going on in their bodies, and make sure that everybody has the tools they need to go through that. And
the feminist side of this is, if we are informed, we are responsible enough to make our own choices.
Yeah.
And I think that's what she's trying to say is, here's information. Use it to your best interest. And there's not one way, and other people shouldn't tell you what to do. You should have the information. She says, I think in the manifesto in here somewhere, she wants I said it's toward the end of the book, here's the capstone, that every woman should have as much information as she does as an OB/GYN about their bodies, to be able to understand when they get advice, should they take it or not.
Yeah, I agree. So for that, I think this book is a good source.
Okay.
And we'll go into it a little bit more on the next
I think
episode.
it's worth a couple more episodes if you all can hang in here with us.
That's right.
All
All right.
right.
Well, I'm Kristen Norton, one of the registered dietitians at Well Balanced Nutrition. We offer nutrition coaching for lifestyle changes, things like prediabetes, IBS, if you're wanting to go plant-based. Check us out. We're at wellbalancednutrition.com, and you can apply for a free clarity call if you think coaching might be right for you.
And I'm Eleanor Russell at 360 Health, number 4 letter U.com. And I help people navigate the nutritional supplement world. If you're not able to maintain your nutrient levels and become deficient, I would like to help you navigate that world because it's very confusing. I also like to help people with their lifestyle choices to benefit a happy life and active aging.
All right. Well, stick around for the next episode. We
Or
got
two,
more.
yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Thanks for listening.
Happy reading.
The views and opinions stated in this podcast are solely those of the contributors and are not necessarily those of our distributors or hosting company. This podcast is copyrighted, and no part can be reproduced without the express written consent of Kristen and Eleanor.